but I don't think I fully released my father of the fact that, he did the best that he could. But let me tell you this though, and this is what my brother that became an alcoholic like him will say, is that he gave us the best life he can give us for what he came from. But look, I grew up in 16 years of that terror. And my kids will not be able to tell you that I reformed myself. My kids don't know nothing about that.
Welcome to And Then Everything Changed, a podcast about the pivotal moments in life and decisions that define us. I'm your host, Ronit Plank. My guest today is Michael Arterberry. For more than 25 years, Michael has been helping teens and adults to use what they have gone through as a catalyst for success rather than as an obstacle for failure. Michael received the 2010 USA Network's Characters Unite Award for exceptional commitment to combating prejudice and discrimination while increasing tolerance and acceptance within the community. He's also the recipient of the 2014 100 Men of Color Award for Leadership in Education, Government, Mentorship, Entrepreneurial Success, and Community Service. In 2008, Michael founded Youth Voices Center, a nonprofit with the mission of helping young people to become active, productive members of society by overcoming their obstacles, their history, stereotypes, and even their own self-image and limiting beliefs. Welcome, Michael.
Yes. Hello. How are you, Ronit?
I'm so good. I'm so excited about our interview. I'm also really excited because I believe you are in the New York area, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. How are things going over there?
It's not too bad. My kid's school is hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not too bad. My daughter is a basketball player and they cleared her basketball season. So she has her first day of practice today.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
So sports, let's talk about sports because I feel like your story is really rooted in this. I mean, it's rooted in a whole bunch of things, but you have two kids who are playing sports, and do they genuinely like sports? Do they like it a lot?
Listen, let me tell you something. When I was praying for healthy kids, but right behind healthy was the fact that I wanted athletes because, yeah, it was, Ronit. Yeah, I can't lie to you. I was an athlete.
Yeah, I know.
Athlete. Yeah, I love sports, so I would have loved them regardless.
Yes, that's good to know.
But God heard me, and I have two phenomenal athletes.
Wow.
So they're not. Yeah, they're just like their dad. They really excel in sports. I'm dad. I've been their coaches, so I'm coach. And then as a motivational speaker, when I'm given permission, I motivate them.
Well, so you sound like, are they teenagers?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, because the description you're giving me and the little rules that they have in place make me think that they're old enough to tell you what they really want and what they think. Because I have teenagers also, so I know the signs. So let's go back then. And first of all, I'm really happy that you got your wish and you have athletic children who you love no matter what, but extra because they're athletic. And I know that you were a super, super megawatt athlete growing up. In a previous conversations, I think you told me you played everything, like soccer, baseball, football, basketball, like you name it, you played it, right?
Yes.
And the story of you in sports is tied in very much to the way that you grew up and how your home life was unfolding and the role that sports played. So do you feel like you can talk a little bit about the first time you got involved with sports to your memory and understood that it was a really good break from the rest of your life?
My first sport was soccer. My mom got me into soccer when I was around 8. You would love to think that she got me into the sport because she wanted her son to be this super athlete, but she did it because she wanted me to have respite from a raging alcoholic father. The sport became my outlet. When she saw that I was able to get respite from the soccer, she just started to rotate those 4 sports that you talked about. So I went from soccer to basketball to baseball to football, and I did all 4 right through until I graduated high school. And as a senior in high school, I could have gone to college to play any of those four sports.
Hmm. So were you also very appreciated by your teammates and your coaches?
Well, what I did is within the structure of my athleticism, you gotta think about it. My house was dysfunctional. So I didn't really have this home where, the best example, like the Brady Bunch or the Cosby Show, I didn't
Yeah.
have this really loving family. So what I did as a child, which I go back and I use it now with my talks, is I created a functional family within my dysfunctional family. So my coaches became my father figures because my raging alcoholic dad was far from someone that was trying to be a role model. My teammates became my brothers and sisters. So that love that I would have with a sibling, and then the accolades that I got from being good in the sport allowed me not to fall victim to a house full of so much negativity. So it was like a bubble. So you got to imagine this kid is cruising through life. He's living in this horrible situation, but because of those factors that I just explained to you, I felt like I was untouched.
Wow, you really felt that it afforded you enough of that sort of bounce and protection that you could use it to fortify yourself when you were home?
Listen, it's guaranteed because what I went through, if what I read a book and it says, "Thank God I don't look like what I came through." If I would, yeah, can you imagine if I look like what I endured in my house, I would not look the way that I look today.
Mhm. Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I had two brothers and a sister, and let me say this, especially they'll never hear the podcast, but they were loving. So when I say I created siblings, I don't want you to think that my siblings were dysfunctional. Um, but you got to see my sister is the closest sibling to me, and she's 12 years from me. So what happened was is my mom, back in the day, she thought she was going through menopause, went to the doctor. Yeah, she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "I'm sorry, Miss Arterberry, but you're pregnant." And she had me at an older age, during technology was not so advanced, had some major complications. And once I was born, the doctor told her I was going to be her gift. And it took me a long time to get there because during my teenage years, the last thing I was a gift. But eventually, I got to a point where she could brag about her little baby being a gift.
Wow, so I didn't realize you were the baby of the family.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't like to say afterthought, but I mean, I was far after my sister where
Mm.
I almost grew up as an only child.
Yes. No, I hear this a lot. In fact, I just interviewed someone who had a 6-year difference between themselves and their brother, and they said it was such a vast age difference for the growing up years, even 6 years. So I can imagine. So does that also mean that you were in the house a lot with just your father and mom?
Yeah, yeah. Believe it or not, my mom and I have a different relationship than they have. And I think it's because of the fact that we were in the house alone so long. Because what I realized is my raging alcoholic father was verbally abusive and physically abusive to my mom. To us kids, you got verbal abuse. It was never directed like right at you. So it wasn't like he would belittle you right in your face. I think really, matter of fact, it was never really at you. But if your mom is being treated that way, I think it's the byproduct. I say that because I realized at a young age that if I got in my mom's lap, my dad wouldn't beat her with physically, but he would still yell. So, Ronit, you got to think about it. I remember 3, 4 years old when I would hear them arguing in a room. I would literally get out of my bed, go into the room. If she was sitting on something, I would climb into her lap, and she never told me, "Get off my lap." And I did this until I was too big to sit in her lap.
Mm, mm. It was sort of like kind of one of those things you learn in a family, like the order of operations or the rules in the
Yes,
family, like the unspoken.
yes.
Yeah. Did you
That's
ever talk
just
about it later in life?
uh, we had we had one of those real loving moments where I brought it up. We didn't discuss it, and what we realized is that was our connection, because I did that for her growing up, but then I was still left in the house. It came up because I was the last to obviously move out, and when I told my mom that I was moving into my first apartment, I thought she would be proud that it was my rite of passage to manhood, but I broke her heart. I broke her heart. I thought I was giving her a gift because I wanted independence, and she was hurt because I was, like her soulmate, in the sense that we used each other in times of crisis. At the time, my dad was had passed, my siblings were gone, and so I was moving on, and she was going to be alone. And my young adult life mentality, I never thought about the fact that, wow, she would take it that way.
Right. But were you waiting? Did you make that decision to move out only because your father had passed?
No, my dad passed when I was 16. So I didn't
Ah.
move. Yeah, I didn't move out. I didn't move out. What I did for my mom, well, not for my mom. My mom's done everything for me. So this is not like I owe her. But what I did is I went to school for social work, and I could have gone to graduate school and did graduate classes for a year and got my master's in social work in just 1 year, accelerated program. But I didn't do that because immediately I wanted to get in the workforce so that I would have the ability to contribute to my house. That was what I wanted to do. My mother raised four kids with a housekeeping salary because my dad spent all his money on drinking. So she struggled all her life. So I was very proud of getting to the age and being able to, I'll never forget bringing home my first installment to rent. Like, here,
Mm.
mom, this
Hmm.
is for rent, and it was best feeling in the world.
So I'm curious about this. I know families are different in their unspoken rules and what happens and how you grow up. Did your siblings when you were younger, not now because I know you guys are adults, but when you were younger, did you talk in the house about your father? Were there discussions about protecting your mom or about how you felt about your father?
Let me tell you something, Roni, and I'm keeping it 100% real. You didn't have to. He terrorized us, terrorized all of us. So it wasn't a blip on the radar. Put it this way: after my dad died, during holidays, we would start out maybe talking about stories of what we endured, and then all of a sudden, we would all just look at each other like, you know what? Let's put this up. We went through situations where you could have made lifetime movies, and I'm not talking about one or two situations. You think in my 16 years, I could have made volumes and volumes of things that I went through growing up. That, first of all, if Child Protective Services ever knew, I would have been pulled from my home. And second of all, if law enforcement heard about it, my dad would have been arrested.
Mm. Hmm. So what about your mom then? I feel like for a parent, she was a victim of abuse and she also was the only other adult in the house. So what are your thoughts about, staying and what she knew you were going through watching her get hurt?
Well, my mom is a woman of faith, and she had a strong relationship with God in a church, and she dove into that, and she was able to pull that around her like a blanket. And anybody that is into their faith in God, that's part of his responsibility to us as his children. So that's what I think happened. I think what happened is he protected her to a certain extent because my mom comes to stay at my house every so often. But even when I was a little younger and I lived with her, if she fell asleep in a separate room in the middle of the night, you would wake up and have to wake her. And this is after my dad had died, because my mom would be having nightmares of my dad chasing her. And so you would walk in the room and she's whimpering and she's running, and you knew what was going on. And so you would have to calm her down and be like, Mom, wake up, Mom. And so, she was able to endure and keep it together for the old school reasons of keeping family together. But the scars and the trauma that it left on her was, when he died, put it this way, when he died, we all had to go to a special place to not say good.
There's this thing that's popped into my head, which is there's only so much someone can take. And, I wonder, did you hit that place growing up and have to just stomach it? How did you, as a growing young man, negotiate watching what you saw and your feelings about the way you were growing up?
Well, it's funny. Four siblings, and all four of us took something different from this father. So you got my oldest brother, who, when he would get verbally aggressive, and my older brother's a big dude. I'm a big guy myself,
Mhm.
but my older brother makes me look little. But I say that, yeah, yeah. And so my older brother could have crushed him with like a pinky.
Mm,
That's how big he was of a man.
mm.
But of course, it's his dad. And so what my older brother did is my older brother took it and separated himself to the point where he lives and lived in a long time in a place of not reality. He made it seem like he didn't really live in that house. All right. My second oldest brother became my dad. So he loved him. So, like, if you talk about my dad in front of my second oldest brother, you'll have a fight on your hands, because his memories of my dad was they were drinking buddies. And then my sister, because every daughter wants their dad to be their king, and this guy that you want to make your husband, like, when you speak to her, she stayed in La La Land with my oldest brother, so she thinks he was the guy that saved the day and was our protector. But you know what? I think, me being a social worker and the type of work that I do now, my brain gave me the ability to look at it for what it really was. And so, what I did is I didn't hate him when it was happening. I told you I created this protective life, so I didn't look back on life and say, "Yo, dude, you took away my happiness and what I was able to have." When I realized that I hadn't forgiven him, is I watched this movie called The Shack, a movie about faith, and this guy's daughter is abducted, and he gets to go back to the cabin where she was abducted. He meets God in the three forms of God, and God allows him to come to grips with what happened to his daughter, but he was abused by his father. And part of the movie, he's on top of a mountain and he's looking into a valley, and there's all these people that are illuminated, almost like figures. And one of them lights up, and God says, "That person wants to talk to you." And he's like, "Yo, I don't know if I want to." And the God said, "Go down and talk to him." And he went down, and it was his dad. Now, his dad abused him growing up, but his dad hugged him and said, "Listen, I raised you the best that I could." You know what I'm saying? And so he kind of gave him some closure. And I cried. I cried because I was like, wow. Now, I didn't carry it. So it wasn't like it was something I carried and it was heavy, but I don't think I fully released my father of the fact that, he did the best that he could. But let me tell you this though, and this is what my brother that became an alcoholic like him will say, is that he gave us the best life he can give us with what he came from. But look, I grew up in 16 years of that terror.
Mhm, mhm.
And my kids will not be able to tell you that I reformed myself. My kids don't know nothing about that.
Mm. I think that's a really important point because first, there's so much I want to say, but I know in families there are these roles that we play, and there are these things that happen every time you get together with your family of origin. There's all these kinds of conversations or feelings and vibes and all that. And I'm not surprised to hear that your siblings have different experiences or at least beliefs about how they grew up. Now, are you saying that the brother who drank with your father became the alcoholic?
Oh yeah, I mean he became his split image. But you want to hear something crazy, Ronique? Is so they all move out, and whenever he would rage, meaning my father, if you call that brother, he can get him out the house. This and it wasn't a power. He may call it a secret power. The power was they just would go somewhere and get even
Mm-hmm.
sloppy or drunk. So they
Right.
had they had a
An agreement. It
commonality.
was like this like agreement in the relationship and unspoken, right? It's just this is
Yeah,
what we do together.
yeah.
So, I mean, did neighbors and family know about this? I mean, did anyone ever express concern or say, maybe it's enough already, or did faith in God preclude that happening?
Ronique, you're not gonna believe this one. So check this out. As crazy as all that is that I just told you, this man was able to pull it together when he went in public. Not only to the point where he could pull it together. My friends used to be like, "Yo, your dad's the coolest dude." People in the community thought he was this honorable guy. But check this out. My wife wrote a book on my life story. It's called God was holding my hand. And I tell you this because as she's writing it, I'm telling my family at every gathering we have, I keep telling them, listen, my wife's writing this book. My wife's writing this book. I'm warning them, Ronique. You know what I'm saying? My wife's writing this book. Finally, I showed up to one of those functions and it was published. And now that it was published, now they're looking at me like, dude, how could you do that? The oldest brother, he you can never find him. He tracks me down. He's like, I have no right. That brother that was the alcoholic like him. What happened was is they got to a point where they were now going to be embarrassed that the gig was up. No, no. And then, my a buddy of mine bought it that was my grade school friend, and I did play dates at his house. And he's a lawyer for Chanel. I mean, he's highly successful. He's on a family trip in Florida. Ronit, he called me crying, and he's like, "Dude, man." He says, "But you came to school every day with a smile on your face." And we didn't know. He's like, "Yo, we didn't know." And so nobody knew my dad was a tyrant.
That
Written.
seems really complicated for your mom too. I mean, as the years went by, I mean, is she alive?
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
she's alive.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
okay.
saying? Yeah, yeah. It wasn't hard because they were so different as far as people. We didn't do social gatherings because he ruined everything. You could never go anywhere with him, Ronit, and not have drama. But remember, he would save the drama for the family. So if you went somewhere, he was the greatest guy until he got in the car.
Mhm.
And then he would kick ass.
I don't even know if this is relevant. Did he ever acknowledge his behavior or show remorse
No,
ever?
no, no, no. He was like your common alcoholic. He would kick it, but all day, all night. And I'm talking about there was times I went to school. I was kept up until maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. He would wake up the next morning, would never apologize to my mom, get dressed, and just leave. Every so often, he would go cold turkey, and it wasn't like he was trying to kick the alcohol. What he would do is he would lock himself at home. So he would come home and not go out. And we hated it because he was now sober, but your fear was anytime he went to drink after locking up like that, Ronit, it was horrible, horrible. That night that he would come home after he's locked in for maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you while he was locked in, you would want to bring him a bottle.
Mm,
Yeah. Nah, you could chuckle. I'm serious. You
mm.
would literally want to sneak him a bottle to his room and be like, yo, Pops, come on, take a sip.
Because you're saying that the backlash was so bad.
Oh, it was severe, Ronique.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't bad. I can't even let you understate that. It was severe.
Just raging. It's because,
Oh,
I know you say you're raging alcoholic father, and it's like, I hear it, and it's like, I'm trying to put myself there, with
all right,
sound,
all right.
with,
So let me walk you through a night. Check this out. So we had to memorize his footsteps, Ronique, because you had to prepare yourself internally of what you're going to endure for the next 8 hours. Now that alone is sick. Imagine he would put his key in the door. So we would hear his footsteps. So living in a duplex, soon as you hear movement and he's not home, you listen for his footsteps, because if they're rapid, that means he's buzzed, and he wouldn't be as much of a rage when he was buzzed. He would end up arguing, but it wouldn't really get to that like devil in its eyes type of rage. But if you heard movement and then you heard silence, you would get this feeling in your gut, because silence meant that he was drunk. And so he would come up the stairs, Ronique. He would put his key in the door. He would stand there for like 10 minutes. And when he opened that door, this man would rage from the time he came through the door until he eventually passed out. Now, what he's yelling about? He's screaming at my mom over something that happened 35 years ago. Like it just happened that morning. It has nothing to do with you, but you have to stay close enough, because if he's going to go into, like I said, the action of the physical, you have to kind of, with me, I would have to like not intervene. And it was what the only beautiful thing about it is I never had to put my hands on my dad. So if I just gotten, but let me tell you, in the midst of this story, when I was 16, now I told you I was a big dude. I told my mom, when he comes home tonight, I'm beating him up. At 16, I could have took him out. I could have killed him, to be honest with you, Ronique. But I didn't think about killing him. But I wanted to beat him so bad that he could eventually say, yo, listen, I'm not going to go after this boy's mother anymore, because he may hurt me. And you know what my mom told me, Ronique? She said, don't you touch him when he comes home. And I looked at her and I'm like, have you been living in the same house as me? But you know what she told me? She says, if you put your hand on your father, I'll have to choose. Don't make me choose between your dad and you. And I'm looking at her like, yo, I was angry, but I stepped away from it, and I realized once I beat him up, she's got to put me out. She's afraid of him. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
So
yes.
she's not gonna, as much as she loves me, her initial is like, yo, you gotta go.
And I think it's important to note too that, like, there's this modern part of me, and this part of me that is not victimized. I'm not victimized. And so it's easy for me in my head, and I'm letting you into my thought process, to say, why couldn't she just leave? Why, and that is a completely uninformed response. I'm aware of that. But it is an interesting thing because, of course, if you did watch a movie about this or read a book, the mom somehow escapes or gets out of there, and people get, some redemption. But it's not like that, is what you're saying.
Well, no, it was because what happened is when he died, remember, all the kids are out. So my siblings have not yet been able. They have issues, but they don't think they have issues.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Being the social worker that I am, and being able to process it properly, I don't have issues. they have post-traumatic stress issues. But when you say a silver lining, his death was it. So what happened was is when he died, she grieved for a man, but I don't think she grieved for a husband.
Yes. Do
You
you
see
feel
what?
like she's free now aside from those nightmares?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Besides the nightmares, because I mean, it was the freedom was almost instantaneous because think about one night you go because he had a car accident. So imagine he had a car accident which was connected to drinking. So imagine going to sleep one night in fear, waking up the next morning, that tyrant that you feared has an accident, but 3 nights later, you don't have to deal with it anymore.
Mhm. Right, and you didn't you don't have to feel guilty either.
No, 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 no guilt. So she worked through the grieving, and you know what? What funny is, he died right around Christmas. We didn't do Christmas for maybe like 5 years after his death. When I realized, check this out, I'm a social worker, and I used to go in and remove kids from abusive homes. So I remember going to a kid's house. He was chained to a radiator. There was dog feces I had to step over to go get him, and no food in the fridge. This is his living area. I take him and bring him to safety, and he fought us to go back there. But that's because it becomes part of your normal. So we didn't grieve and miss my dad, but we missed that dysfunction. And so 5 years, yeah, we did. 5 years went by. There was a hole missing, which wasn't a positive hole. And then finally, after 5 years, it's like somebody woke up and said, "Yo, what the heck are we doing?" And we brought it back around, and we started to celebrate. I think that brother that was like him kind of kept some of that going because he kept drinking and acting crazy, not to us, but then, it's unfortunate my nephews got raised in an environment identical to what my brother came from.
Oh, man, and that I was
Yeah.
just you're, like, reading my mind because I was just gonna say I wanted to circle back to what we were talking about a couple minutes ago, which is how people can turn out so differently in the same family.
Yeah,
And here
yeah.
you are, you're saying that, your kids wouldn't even ever know the way you were raised because that's nowhere near anything you would ever do. And yet you have a brother who is repeating the pattern. And what do you think about that? I know tons of stuff could be written about this, but what's your hunch, having been a social worker and lived through this? Why is it nature or nurture? Do you think it's because of who you are, your birth order? Why do you think that you are just why is he like that and you're like you?
Because God gifted me with the ability to be intuitive and the faith, and it's called discernment. I'm maybe not the most book smart intellectual guy, but I've always had an innate ability to look at things and properly pick them apart. And because I've been able to do that, and then you think about this. So growing up, I was able to distinguish and compartmentalize my life, and then my career is talking about what I endured. So my job, which I get paid for on a daily basis, is therapeutic.
Yes, right. You're always kind of bringing it out into the
I,
light.
I have to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, I have to. If I'm talking to an audience, I'm motivating them from what I endured. When I'm talking to teenagers, I'm motivating them from what I endured. So I've gone through it, I've dissected it, and I know where to put it.
Yes, yes. And it's sort of what you're saying, I think, is that the unprocessed feelings can be more dangerous and they can just keep coming back to haunt people.
So the work that I do with teenagers is it's about your story. So I hired my brother, the alcoholic brother. Finally, let me tell you, he got his life together. He's living well. He's alcohol free. I mean, he became alcohol free because he got pancreatitis, and they said if you ever drink again, you'll die. So I hired him, and he started to travel with me. Now, when I first had him in my circles, so I run groups, I do them in circles, they're in depth. I talk when he wasn't with me, I would talk deep about my dysfunction and how this dad abused me. I pull him into my circle, and I started to feel like I felt handcuffed. And anytime I would speak about my father, I would kind of look at him and forget that we had different perspectives on him. But finally, he worked with me for like 2 years. Eventually, in the midst of that journey, he looked at me, Ronit, and was like, yo, I'm sorry. He says, I'm sorry because he didn't know. They didn't know. You got to remember all those years I lived it by myself. But he was like, I'm sad that I left you in that environment. I'm like, dude, you couldn't have took me anywhere. You were just as freaking bad.
Did you say
You
that?
know, no, I wanted to though. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to though, but
I feel like I wanted you to say it to him, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand.
yeah. But you know what? I didn't have to because what eventually happens in life is he was on the road with me for 2 years. We would meet young people who had dads just like he was to his son. So for 2 years, he got a constant reminder of how he destroyed two lives because he couldn't come to grips with something that was his own hindrance.
Are his children grown now?
Yeah, and they're screwed up.
Oh man. Do they
Oh,
have a
they're
relationship?
no, well, eventually, but it's crazy because they're now adults. One of them is addicted to pharmaceuticals. So he's addicted to pills. The other one is not an alcoholic, but not dealing with what he came through. It spins off as anxiety, this, that, and whatever. But if you speak to my brother now, the guy that's recovered and living a regular life, he takes no responsibility for the way they turn out.
Oh, so it seems like he didn't do much learning then. I want to talk about the work you do and before, in this next part, but I was curious what your relationship to alcohol and drugs is.
Oh, girl, I played with them bad boys. Come on, I came from, man. I smoked weed. I did cocaine. I did all the drugs. I did all the drugs. It was in my house. My oldest sibling didn't do any of them. I tried them all. And one,
And
yeah. And what I'm saying, and I found that with the history that I have, you can't do that. And then with the alcohol, what happened was is finally in college, I did the college drinking. The drugs, I put them aside. I didn't, when I say experimented, I ran through them. So it's like, tried it. I don't really like this. And I just stopped it. So nothing I ever had to wean myself off. I created a new relationship with alcohol when I realized in college, I was like, yo, listen, dude, look at what you're doing. You're creating yourself up to be just like your dad, and I didn't want it. So I created a new relationship with alcohol. And so I'm at the point now where, listen, you come to my house, I have some beers in the fridge, but I'm not getting drunk anywhere. And alcohol and I have a very good relationship.
And, when you were young and you were going to school, and I know that you had the coaches and stuff, but you were in this environment where there's so much stress. Did you have any physical symptoms? Because all I can think of is, when that kind of stress in a family can happen, there can be so many, there can be so many illnesses that the stress comes out as, like upset stomach and lowered immune system and headaches. Did you have any of that?
Nope. You know why? Only reason why, Ronnie, is because the sports fields became my exit. Oh man, if you came and watched me, I was amazing. I was amazing in all of them because I took everything that I felt inside and I just regurgitated it out on whatever's field I was on.
Hmm. And so you have said, and I love that you said this. You said that you don't have to take your history with you. It just feels like that really encapsulates what you do.
Your history can control your destiny if you don't look at it from the proper perspective.
Yeah. So you've been a social worker for a while. So let's talk a little bit about. I know you've won some awards for all of your work to help people in their own journey of growth and kind of, I guess I want to say kindness and vulnerability and becoming who they can be and not letting their circumstances dictate the rest of their life. So, what are you passionate about now? What do you work on regularly now that you're excited about?
And I have a nonprofit that I bring into high schools where I try to find young people. They don't have to come from the dysfunction that I came from. I relate and I connect to kids that came through the horrific experience I have, but I also have relationships with the kid that's in the honor roll classes going off to Harvard. You know what I'm saying? And what I do is I have a unique gift to bring comfort to people with my words and my presence. Sometimes I don't even have to say something to you. I could just be in the same room with you and you feel like I'm holding your hand or coddling you. And it makes people want to tell me their deepest, darkest secrets. And I'm the type of person that once you tell me and you make yourself vulnerable, I take what you tell me, I make sense of it, and I help you help yourself direct your path on which way you want to go. So I do that in a setting with teenagers in high school, and I do it with adults. You know, I do one-to-one sessions where I allow you to get some of that history out, but then I allow us as a partnership to unwind it and find proper perspective with it so it becomes a catalyst to be successful rather than a catalyst to failure.
Mm. When did you notice that you seemed to have this effect on people where they could talk to you and be sort of in community with you without you having to do much?
When I was a counselor as a teenager, I always ended up getting a kid in a camp that nobody could control. And all I would do is, Jimmy would come in my group, and I'm a type of guy when it's a discipline problem. Immediately, I set boundaries that maybe other people haven't been able to set because I call myself a real person. Is I genuinely give you sort of the telepathy that you say, yo, this guy really cares about me. He really cares about me. And when a person really genuinely absorbs the fact that you care about them, it's amazing on what they'll do for you.
How do you handle it when you get tapped out or emotionally drained? How do you recharge and get back to the full enough to help other people?
I don't get tapped out. Now, I don't say that out of conceit, but I'm a spiritual guy. So my place of rest is my God. And so every day I wake up and I spend a solid hour between music, reading, videos, and I fill myself on a daily basis with this God that I believe in. And so I in the Bible it says leave it at his feet. And that's what I do, Roni. It's I get up every morning. I just told you about all these people that I have these interactions with. And what I do is I put it at his feet on a daily basis. So by the time I leave my house to get in my car, I'm empty. It definitely helps me too. I empty out. I have to be empty when I go in the presence of these people because if I'm carrying anything, I can't absorb what they're trying to give me.
Right. And do you feel that if you weren't doing this work, it would be bad for you?
Oh, I'd be a freaking maniac, Rooney. I may be a mass murderer. I mean, no joke. You see me on the Channel 2 News. Listen, this is the most healthiest thing. Oh man.
Yeah. So, Michael, if listeners want to find you and connect with you and learn more about your work and your mission, where would you like them to find you?
Listen, they can come to michaelarterberry.com, which is my public speaking platform. So that if you want to see what I do more on the individual level and with audiences, you can come there. If you want to see what I do with the youth, they can go to youthvoicescenter.org. And that is my nonprofit that I do with the young people. If they go there, there's a nice video. It says Power of Peace, the name of my program in action. They can see me actually working with the youth. So they can check it out. They can come to my social media pages. Michael Arterberry on Facebook. We'll put it in the show notes. They LinkedIn, all my social media pages. I'm interactive. This guy that you hear on this interview, if you hit me up with a message on any one of those platforms, I respond to you. And I say that because what I also do, and I want your listeners to know, is I do one-to-one. I do the one-to-one coaching sessions to really help people dig into their stories and find purpose in their lives. And so, sometimes people hear me in a podcast for a short period of time, but if they're interested in doing something like that, we'll put my email address in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put everything for contacting.
Yeah. And come on, let's go for this ride. Let's go for this ride because I love it. I love to get in your car, in your passenger seat, and teach you how to drive, even though you may have a license.
That's awesome. Ooh. Michael, it was so good to talk with you.
Oh, listen, I like your energy. My best interviews are actually when people have good energy. And Ronit, you have good energy.
Oh, thank you. I will take that compliment, especially coming from you.
I wrote a book, Be Encouraged.
Okay, so we can find that too. Be encouraged.
You have 250 days of motivation and encourage. They can actually go to shakethedirtexperience.com and they can get a free copy.
Thank you so much. You take really good care of yourself because we all need you. Thank you for listening to And Then Everything Changed. For more on this episode, photos, and other episodes you might like, please visit atecpodcast.com. You can connect with me and learn more about episodes on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram also. Just search for my name, Ronit Plank, RONITPLANK, and you will find all the updates. If you like this podcast, please remember to subscribe and also rate and review so other people can find it. Thank you so much for listening.